Hello and welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Helsinki for the MSEM format. I'm Caillou, and today we're going to be watching the round 1 match between Gateways and Chumbeque. Gateways is on Sultai Dreamsight, which is a greedy, rampish control deck, which aims to overwhelm its opponent in card advantage due to its titular card, Dreamsight Well, which allows you to draw 5 cards if your library has 100 or more cards in it, which does explain this 133 card deck. It functions because the format has lots of redundancy for its best effects and good tutors, so the deck can essentially just play all the best wipes, all the best card draw, all the best spot removal, and then get away with drawing at least one piece of them when it needs it. Meanwhile, Chumbeque is playing red-white Infect, called so not because it actually uses the Infect mechanic, but because it has a similar play pattern. Essentially, Chumbeque has a bunch of 1 mana, 0 power double strikers, and then aims to use them in order to pump them up with a bunch of auras and or pump spells. It can deal a maximum of 18 damage turn 2, and often threatens to kill as early as turn 3 or 4. But just like Infect, it is very fragile if you manage to remove the creature that you put all the auras and pump spells onto. Which is presumably why we see Gateways playing mana untapped right here. Chumbeque going to play the turn 2 Balanced Blade. Does Gateways have a response to this? Okay, does not. Chumbeque is going to orchestrate Blessing of Valor. Orchestrate basically means that you prepare the spell by paying its orchestrate cost, in this case, which is tapping a red or white creature. And then next time you cast a spell, you get to cast the Orchestrate card. Unfortunately for Chumbeque, Gateways does have the Exeunt. Just immediately kill the Balanced Blade. Chumbeque still has Blessing of Valor out there in the Aether, but it's going to be useless because when Chumbeque goes to cast their next creature, the Blessing of Valor will be insta-cast, and none of Chumbeque's creatures naturally have haste. And yeah, Gateways deck, just as long as it doesn't whiff, it will keep hitting on removal spells. So yeah, Chumbeque's going to play another Balanced Blade, Blessing of Valor it up. But yeah, Balanced Blade does not have haste. He's going to enchant the Balanced Blade with this Impish Delights. Pretty good aura, which also cantrips, which is pretty necessary for Chumbeque's deck because of how all-in it goes on a single creature and how it uses pump spells. It often runs out its hand very quickly. But yeah, this is where we could see the problem with Dreamsight. If Gateways doesn't have an answer to this Balanced Blade, which can happen when you're running a 140 card deck, you only have so many answers. But yeah, if Gateways doesn't have an immediate answer to this Balanced Blade, Chumbeque could just run train over them. It's currently threatening to do 4 damage, and if Chumbeque untaps, I have no doubt that it'll threaten to do anywhere from 5 to even straight up kill the Gateways. But Gateway's just going to play another land and pass. On one hand, this could be Gateways trying to wait for Chumbeque to expend more resources. But if Gateways has a non-edict removal spell, I feel like they should have run it out right then because of Chumbeque's main deck protection. Has a hybrid blue-white spell for 1 mana, which which counters a spell that targets a creature, a permanent or you control or you. But for now, Chumbeque gonna suit up the Balanced Blade further. Ethereal Armor. So now this Balanced Blade is a 4/4 double striker. Oh, but Gateways is gonna disallow the Ethereal Armor, which I guess is fine, but also not where you want to be. Yikes! But Chumbeque has the Murder Lust, which is definitely far more threatening than the Ethereal Armor currently. So now the Balanced Blade is a 5/5. Is going to swing for a whopping 10 this turn and threaten to kill Gateways next turn unless Gateways has an answer for the Balanced Blade. Which fortunately now Gateways' spot removal is back online because Chumbeque doesn't have mana up. But yeah, Gateways does have reasonable tutors that can help here. Conjure Realities would be able to easily fetch a removal spell. I'm not sure if Ancestral Council searches up a spell with exactly CMC2 or CMC2 or less, but if it is 2 or less, can search up Exeunt and then Exint once more. Or even, now that Gateways has 5 lands, could search for something else. But nope, okay, he's just gonna hard Violent Collapse. And because you might be thinking, wait, doesn't that aura give +3/+3? So shouldn't Balance Blade survive? But Murderlust actually only gives +3/+3 when it attacks. So it has 1 toughness otherwise. And it seems like Chumbeque doesn't have another threat, so Gateways is going to survive another day. And I think since Chumbeque only has 8 threats total, it's going to be very hard for him now, because now Gateways has a bunch of mana, presumably has more counter magic up, so can just counter a threat rather than have to have a hard removal spell for it. But there's the White Petal Ronin, threat number 3. And answer number 3 from Gateways has the Cursory Glance. There's the counter magic. And I think this is the problem with the Infect deck, is it's so explosive, but so fragile. Its one saving grace is being able to prey on Gateways not having the right threats, but Gateways emphatically does at this. Okay, and on end step, Gateways is gonna Seek the Future. This is a pretty good draw spell, which also works well with Dreamsight itself, because usually what happens is, since Dreamsight draws you 5 cards, you either don't want to use it until you're very empty-handed, or you kind of have to use it early and then discard a lot of cards, which makes the card advantage it gives you kind of feel bad. The no maximum hand size clause on the Seek the Future makes that negligible. So Gateways gets to refill up a little bit. So Gateway's going to tap out for the main phase, Conjure Realities. Can now search up for a Recall Forgotten Aeons, perhaps? Oh no, it's going to find a Dreamsight well. That works as well, just refill their hand completely. I was thinking Recall Forgotten Aeons because it's a card draw spell that also functions as a win. And Conjure Realities is really strong because in addition to being a tutor, it also, because of the Abound, doesn't have the typical tempo downside that tutors normally have. Can just immediately cast his Dreamsight well. And yep, there's a titular card. Yeah, now it's hard to see how Chumbeque can come back at this point, because doesn't have reach, needs to have a creature and resolve it, which Chumbeque looks like still has not drawn a creature, whereas maybe waiting to have both a threat and one of the protection spells. The problem is the protection spells don't protect against edicts, which Gateways is likely to have at least one of those, or even a counter spell at this point. Like, I think it's going to be a slow victory for Gateways, but at this point, I feel like it's inevitable. And another Conjure Realities from Gateways. Is this one going to grab a Recall Forgotten Aeons? No, Jesus, another Dreamsight well. I mean, I guess Dreamsight well, the thought of Dreamsight well is, it will eventually draw me into one of my win cons, and I also get 4 other cards in the bargain, and I don't have to lose out on card advantage because of my unlimited hand size. So yeah, Gateways goes up to a whopping 11 cards in hand. And Chumbeque still doesn't have a threat. And I think the worst part is, even if Chumbeque gets a threat, like, none of his auras or pump spells give haste. So Chumbeque will have to wait a whole turn cycle. And like, with Gateways having this hand, there's no way. Like Chumbeque's one out is that Gateways greedily taps out, and then Chumbeque can get through with haste, but that doesn't even matter. So Gateways is going to cast Fateful Journey, which is essentially a card that tutors to the top of your library, grabbing a Disallow, which I guess Gateways doesn't have any other counter magic, which is why they're grabbing this, but again, that feels kind of surprising, because I feel at this point you just want to close out the game, because you've effectively won. Ooh, and the whopping 7 mana for Ravaging Tyrant. This is a card which I think differs from the normal Sultai Dreamsight lists, but it is incredibly powerful. So just going to bolt Chumbeque. Chumbeque has to also discard a card. And I think, yeah, and the Ravaging Tyrant on its own presents a 2-turn clock. Usually the win con that lots of these Dreamsight control decks go for is like Revelations, which are sorceries which you can cast as creatures later from your graveyard, or they go for just straight Planeswalkers. So Gateways' deck is unusual in that it uses Ravaging Tyrant. But Ravaging Tyrant is a much faster win con generally than the Coalesce cards. And also, even though it's vulnerable to creature removal, usually people do side out creature removal versus control decks, so Ravaging Tyrant does do some damage there. Chumbeque just conceded there because no answer to the Ravaging Tyrant, no haste. There's no way Chumbeque was winning that, so he's just going straight into game 2, minimal sideboarding even, which is kind of surprising to me. But yeah, I think if there's any game that Chumbeque should win, it's now, because is on the play and should just be able to try and turbo out a threat before Gateways can have a 2-mana answer. Because Gateways' only 1-mana answer, if I remember right, is an Exant. And again, 140 card deck, it's going to be very hard to find that. But it looks like Chumbeque might be the one who's having trouble finding something. Gonna mull to 5. Meanwhile, Gateway's keeping their first clutch of 7, which doesn't bode well for Chumbeque right here. And yep, there's the turn 1 threat from Chumbeque, Balanced Blade coming out. Meanwhile, Gateway's just playing a tapped land and passing. This is Chumbeque's time to shine. Okay, Impish Delight's going to be coming out, and a Tear Through. So total of 10 damage this turn. Unfortunately, since the Tear Through isn't an aura, doesn't threaten to kill next turn unless Chumbeque has another 3-power buff spell, but still very strong nonetheless. Meanwhile, Gateways just plays an island and passes, doesn't have any black mana for those removal spells, could fetch one with the Mysterious Cataract, but I don't know, this is looking dicey for Chumbeque. Or sorry, for Gateways. And a False Shimmer on the Balanced Blade. If this resolves, and Gateways doesn't have a removal spell for the Balanced Blade, like, Gateways just loses right here. But is gonna crack the Mysterious Cataract, so probably has some sort of answer right here. Okay, and has the Cursory Glance for the False Shimmer. So isn't quite dead yet, but the Balanced Blade still gets to swing in for 4. And the thing is, even if Chumbeque doesn't draw another pump spell next turn, can use Balanced Blade's natural fire breathing ability to put it up to 3 power and kills Gateways. So Gateways needs to have an answer for the Balanced Blade right here, right now. Okay, gonna ping themselves for 2, but plays Liliana at the brink. He's gonna +1 her, and then gets 2 blockers. Meanwhile, Chumbeque has the Murderlust though, and that gives the Balanced Blade trample. Gateways is tapped out, and this is curtains for them. So we're going to game 3, and yep, it seems like 2 of the issues with Dreamsight did come up in that game 2. Game 1 we saw its strengths, but game 2 we saw the mana base can be painful because of you can't just run some of the best lands in the format, so you end up taking a lot of damage from your shock fetches and stuff if you don't hit the right lands. And also, if you don't hit the right threats, or sorry, not threats, right answers, you can crumble under the pressure of some of the faster decks in the format. But yeah, this game 3 is going to be hard for Chumbeque to win, I feel like, because with Gateways on the play, that completely changes the momentum of this matchup. But unlike last time, this time Gateways is the one mulling, while Chumbeque is keeping a fresh 7. Okay, Gateway is going to keep it 6. Is playing the turn 1 Mysterious Cataract and cracking it. Or, I guess is maybe not cracking it immediately, but letting it stay untapped. I guess this signals that Gateways does have the Exant, or is at least threatening an Exant. And Chumbeque does have the turn 1 White Petal Ronin, so if Gateways has the Exant, no better time than now to use it. But no, fetches an island. So I guess it was a bluff, and might be a painful bluff, because that 2 life could definitely come back to bite Gateways. She's going to play a swamp and pass, so I guess doesn't have removal for the White Petal Ronin. Probably has another Cursory Glance here for like a pump spell to buy Gateways some time. So Impish Delight's coming down. Gateways letting this one resolve. Ooh, and an Ethereal Armor. Gateways is going to run out the Pierce the Storm on this one, though. That explains why Gateways didn't counter the Impish Delights. Was waiting to see whether Chumbeque had the protection spell, I guess. But yeah, just going to eat 4 here from the White Petal Ronin. At least it isn't 8, I guess? Oh wow, Gateways is playing the Grim Bastion untapped as well. Going to shock themselves once more. And yeah, if this is... I guess this... I was going to say this could be for a disallow, but no, getting the double black. And Liliana at the brink once more. So this forces Chumbeque to have one of the trample auras. And Chumbeque does have the trample aura, Murderlust on the White Petal Ronin. 5/5 double strike trampler coming through. Now, does Chumbeque have one more pump spell? Because if so, that just kills Gateways. Otherwise, I think Gateways hangs on here with 2 life. Or can double block and survive with 3 life. So yep, is going to double block. So it takes a whopping 8 damage regardless. And now is dead next turn. We're back to playing the game of does Gateways have the answer, does Gateways not? Could go land, conjure realities. Okay, on upkeep is going to Fateful Journey for an Exeunt. So pings himself for 1, but grabs the most important removal spell in their deck and draws it off the top. And yep, so close yet so far. Gateway surviving at 2, but has the removal for the White Petal Ronin. And now future creatures are going to have trouble getting through because of this Liliana's gumming up the board with zombie tokens. And yeah, again, Chumbeque doesn't have any haste in the side, doesn't have any burn, so is going to have to get this damage through the old-fashioned way, which might be easier given that Gateways is at 1 card in hand, so is unlikely to have another removal spell. So he's going to play a Balanced Blade, oh, and a White Petal Ronin? Chumbeque with all of the threats. Now, just needs a Trample Aura. Okay, Gateways doesn't have Conjure Realities for a Dreamsight well, but does have a Seek the Future. And he's going to tap out main for it. Okay, and he's going to +1 Liliana once more. The zombie tokens that Gateways created last turn will now die. It gets to keep the ones that they created this turn. Notably, next turn can now -4 Liliana, and that means that Gateways only needs to answer the White Petal Ronin and not the Balanced Blade, because the Balanced Blade will just auto-die. But once more, if Chumbeque has the Murder Lust, nope, has an Ethereal Armor for the White Petal Ronin. Actually, what would do it is even the Menace Aura kills here, because gives Menace to White Petal Ronin and then swings with Balanced Blade. Gonna swing in. Gateways is gonna double block White Petal Ronin. I think Gateways missed Balanced Blade's pump ability. Oh, it also has Engage, so it has to be blocked. Fair. But yeah, if Balanced Blade didn't have Engage, that misplay would have lost Gateways the game. But as it is now, Balanced Blade dies because it trades with the 1/1. Oh no, it has Double Strike. See, I'm dumb, so Balanced Blade lives. So now, it's a waiting game. Is Gateways gonna get the wipe before Chumbeque can get the Menace Aura? Oh, and Gateways has the Violent Collapse. What a top deck. And yeah, I'm gonna +1 Liliana. And I think this game is solidly out of Chumbeque's hands now. Yeah, it doesn't have another threat. I think the double threat plan works well against it works well for the board that he was faced with, because a Menace Aura and a Trample Aura, it basically let either of them save him. But without getting either of them, it just opened him up to the wipe. And it would have also been nice versus an Edict, but still. And yeah, now Gateways is going to -4 Liliana, so the only live threats in Chumbeque's deck are the White Petal Ronins, because the Balanced Blades just insta-die on end step when Chumbeque plays them. And as we've mentioned again and again, Chumbeque just does not have any hasty auras for some reason. This just seems to be a big deck-building blunder for Chumbeque, and no burn in the side or anything. And now Gateways is going to start their slow victory lap, swinging in with the zombies every turn. Okay, several turns later, Gateways has just been chipping in with the zombies. Chumbeque hasn't done anything, but Gateways is going to play their first spell in a while, going to conjure realities for a Dreamsight well. And because of that Look to the Future they cast oh so long ago in this game, they will not have to discard any of the 5 cards that they draw off this well. And Chumbeque is basically out of the game at this point. Oh, does have an instant speed Nomadic Journey, but Gateways cursory glances it. Chumbeque can exile it to create a token, though. I was saying that Chumbeque is out of this game because Gateways gave him a second Liliana emblem, which means that he can't even rely on White Petal Ronin as a threat. But I completely forgot about this Nomadic Journey from the sideboard. But unfortunately, Gateways has a double answer and is going to try... Oh yeah, and also has the Unbreachable Walls for the Memento Mori, because Memento Mori targets him. So wait, Chumbeque could actually win off of a game that seemed unwinnable because this Nomad now has pseudo haste. And yeah, there's the Murder Lust. And Chumbeque takes that. And like, Gateways had the game completely locked out. And then, and like with the second Liliana emblem, it seemed like a sure thing. But then the clutch nomadic journey sequence, and then just the back and forth. And oh my god. And yeah, oh, on one hand, you could say Gateways threw that away, but also, like, I think, like, it was like a small set of plays, and, like, how could you expect that line from Chumbeque? It was just so out of the blue. But yeah, wow. In like, probably the most come from behind win I've ever seen, Chumbeque on White Red Infect takes a 2-1 over Gateways on Sultai Dreamsight. And god, if this is the quality of matches we have to look forward to for this GP, I am so hyped. But yeah, until next time, this is Caillou signing off.